Sri Lanka's food security is at crossroads. 1 in 4 households struggles with food insecurity, while Cyclone Ditwa left 2.2 million people affected, nearly 10% of the population. Rising import dependence, inflation and global supply shocks compound the crisis. As climate disasters intensify, resilience is tested daily, and we have some questions on Sri Lanka's food future to ask the FAO representative for Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Vimlendra Sharan, on Kaleidoscope Ceylinco Life Dialogues today. Does Sri Lanka have a food security problem? Very briefly.
Yes and no. Sri Lanka is very dependent on its 2 cropping seasons. So in the years we produce enough, we have food. In the years when we have external shocks and the production is hampered, issues of food security do crop up. So very contextual depending on how the year has played out.
So Sri Lanka's food security snapshot shows an above average cereal production and but rising import needs. How sustainable is it to keep this balance?
Food security will have to be seen with 2 lenses. One is agriculture and one is the fiscal space you have. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with imports. Not every country is self-sufficient in food. So Sri Lanka produces adequate amount of cereals in a good year, as I said. But in a bad year, due to climate issues or any other external shocks, when the production is down, we have to go for imports. At such time, the fiscal space available with the government to import food into the country determines your food security. So I would say it's an interplay of 2 factors, the agriculture side, the production factor, and the fiscal side, the dollars that you have impacting your import. Food security, therefore, preferably should be on a self-sufficiency basis. If not, we should have enough in our kitty to be able to import and provide to the public.
So looking back at our most recent natural disaster, Cyclone Ditwa affected 2.2 million people. How exposed are we to future climate shocks which would disrupt food security?
We should not play down the climate impact on Sri Lankan agriculture. Whether it be flood, whether it be drought, what we are seeing is increased intensity and a very high level of recurrence. So Sri Lanka has to be ready and has to adapt itself, become more resilient to face these onslaughts. Coupled with this also is the fact of external shocks like what we are seeing today, when your fertilizer import or your fuel imports get impacted by factors which are just not under your control. So these things will be very, very crucial for Sri Lankan agriculture in the future.
Suppose cyclone WFP did some studies, found that there were household vulnerabilities. What do these findings actually say about resilience at community level?
We have to make it very clear that we have to, and the listeners also have to, distinguish between recovery and resilience. I'll give a very short example. You have a mud house, flood comes, the house gets washed away. You rebuild a mud house, that's recovery. But you rebuild a concrete cement structure, that's resilience. So just coming back to where you started from is not what is resilience. As we come out of Cyclone Ditwa, we have to understand that rebuilding Sri Lankan agriculture must focus on what is going to come, not what has already happened. And that difference must be very clearly understood. We have to understand how is the climate playing out. We have to understand how are the supply shocks going to play out in the world market, and then build our own self to meet those challenges.
So 26% of our population is still food insecure. What immediate interventions do you think we should be taking to at least not alleviate it, but at least to reduce that insecurity?
Luckily for Sri Lanka, it is not a situation where somebody is dying of starvation. Everybody has food to eat, and thank God for that. But not everybody has adequate amount of food. So what has happened is that the Sri Lankan plate has changed. So where a Sri Lankan family would be having 3 greens and 1 non-veg maybe every day, you find that changing to once a week or twice a week because of these problems that they're facing. So as an immediate intervention in a situation where there is no food, obviously we have to provide actual food. But my personal take is always to provide means to better production. So if a farmer has suffered due to a cyclone, due to a drought, due to a flood, what we should be providing for is fertilizer, for seed, for the farmer to get back to farming. 1 kilo of rice, if given to you, will be consumed within 4 days or 3 days. But 1 kilo of seed will actually go on to produce 10 kilos of rice. And that is the equation that we have to play. So it has to be a very nuanced and a very thought out intervention. In an area of severe food deficiency, we have to provide food immediately because people can't be left to starve. But in areas where people are managing, we should look at enhancing agriculture.
So Sri Lanka, and I would dare say most countries, are more reactive rather than proactive. So the current recovery measures, are these adequate, and what more needs to be put in place if we are to move from emergency relief to long-term resilience?
First and foremost, say that we have to work very hard on developing an anticipatory action protocol. And our advisories have to be impact driven. Today, we are in a position where we can predict that a particular cyclone may hit or a big rainfall is going to come in 3 days. But to the farmer, it means nearly nothing. We are not giving the correct advisory that if this rain comes, this dam might have a problem, there might be an overflow. If this overflow happens, this is the area which is going to be impacted, this is what you should do. Those impact-driven advisories are still not in place, and that is costing us a lot. So if we need to build resilience, we have to start from there. What is your advance warning? From there, you then go to issues around better research, flood-tolerant seed varieties where the water can come and recede, but the plant will still survive. Diversification into areas outside agriculture or in different agricultural crops, value addition. So there are multiple steps which you can take to make Sri Lankan agriculture resilient. And again, I will repeat, keeping in mind that resilience will always have a limit, so we need to keep working on it. It's like a rubber band. You stretch it to stretch it maximum and it will break. You can't go on stretching it unless you keep adding more and more capacity. So it's a long drawn but a consistent effort which needs to be put in from policy to action for making the agriculture sector more resilient.
What policy shifts are necessary to make sure that we strengthen our local production and maybe reduce our import dependence?
I would say that you should concentrate perhaps growing paddy only in area where you can get a good productivity and release land from say western wetlands, western province wetlands, which are hardly giving you any paddy. So you need to do a policy shift there to ensure that unproductive land under paddy is taken out and given to some other crop. So you need crop diversification, and you can achieve that in Sri Lanka without sacrificing your production. The total production remaining the same, you can get the total production out of a smaller area of land and release land for other uses. Value addition extremely low. That is something which we must do in Sri Lanka. The farmers must start getting into the value chain. Diversification out of agriculture, very low. Again, that is something which we must encourage. For example, how many farmers are also into dairy? So suppose my flood comes and my crop is destroyed. Can the dairy take care of my needs? These are policy shifts which are needed. You also need to bring in policy shifts to make adaptation to climate change and to external shocks easier for the farmers and the fishers. Changing the hull of a boat. You are reducing 30% fuel. Now, why should you not have a policy which encourages the fishers to take loan at a subsidized rate from commercial bank to help build such boats? Now, that's a policy which perhaps the finance ministry or the treasury has to come out with. How do you subsidize loans to farmers or to fisher folks to encourage them to become more resilient, more adapted to all these shocks, so that the country keeps moving on despite what is happening externally?
So, whether we like it or not, global and climate pressures are going to be more the rule than the exception.
Absolutely.
What would Sri Lanka's 5-year outlook for food security be?
We have to have a very dynamic policy in place which reads the production signals correctly and also brings in adequate amount of imports to match the shortfall. But at the base of all this, we also need to have a very good buffer stocking policy because emergencies are not going to end and we have to be ready. If the fertilizer crisis continues, and with this region getting nearly 30% of its fertilizer through the Strait of Hormuz from the Gulf countries, you're going to have an impact. And China will be impacted, India will be impacted, Vietnam will be impacted, Indonesia will be impacted. So if the entire region gets impacted, who do you go and ask for help from? So the global picture also in today's world is very dependent on the external supply shocks which come in. So we have to be ready for this. And my sincere hope is that we plan not for 1 year, not for 6 months. Our planning must be in a horizon of 5, 10, 15 years, and we need to strengthen ourselves accordingly.
From YouTube, Facebook to LinkedIn and Instagram, on Kaleidoscope we have stories that matter. Subscribe and follow, you won't miss out then.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the rest.